Good evening and welcome to City News. Just days ago, he was acquitted of murdering a Toronto police constable. Tonight, Umar Zameer is sitting down with City News to share his story. Faiza Amin joins us with that revealing and emotional interview. Faiza.
Well, Cynthia, for the last 3 years, he's been accused of deliberately killing a police officer. But as the public learned over the last 5 weeks, there was just so much more to this tragic story. Umar Zameer is now a free man after a not guilty verdict and is finally sharing his truth.
It was like a roller coaster. So helpless, so scared.
Umar Zameer was living in fear, not knowing his fate following a tragedy that gripped the city. Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup, a veteran of the Toronto Police Service, fatally run over by a vehicle in the underground parking garage at City Hall. Then Police Chief James Raymer told the city,
"This was an intentional and deliberate act."
Except that wasn't the story. And for 3 years, Umar Zameer has been awaiting trial, anxious to learn his fate and clear his name. A jury helped him do that on Sunday, acquitting him of first-degree murder.
I couldn't breathe. It was like all those 3 years were the haunting years were going away at that moment, and especially the words from the judge. That gave us so much hope, relief.
That night back in 2021, Zameer, his 8-month pregnant wife Ida Sheikh, and their 2-year-old son Alian were in downtown Toronto for Canada Day festivities. The family was in their vehicle leaving when approached by a man and a woman who they say were acting aggressive, then blocked in by a black vehicle on one side. They thought they were about to be attacked and just wanted to drive away. What they didn't know, these were undercover police officers that were investigating a stabbing the family had nothing to do with. Umar Zameer's wife says police didn't share her statement with the public.
I go home and I find out on the news that it was the complete opposite, and it was by the police themselves. I did feel betrayed. I thought they were going to help us, but everything was just so negative, whatever they spoke about Umar.
Since the start of the trial, the Zameer family has felt public perception change.
Whenever someone is telling us that people are started talking good, I always tell them why it took so long for them to realize the truth. She always said the same thing.
Yeah.
Why it took 3 years.
We tell ourselves that, it's not their fault, but now the response that we're getting, the messages, it's so overwhelming.
But a daily dose of sadness remains for the police officer who never got to go home.
My bond with Alian, whenever I see him smiling, whenever I hug him, I always think about the 3 kids who do not have the father anymore.
I also asked Zameer about the police chief's announcement that he's called for a review into allegations of collusion following the eyewitness testimonies of 3 police officers. Zameer says he hopes everyone learns something from this tragedy.
Now, Faiza Amin joins us now. And Faiza, you've been covering this case extensively. You were in the courtroom. What was it like to walk into that room and talk to this man and his wife?
Listen, there was so much trauma that happened that night, right? And speaking with Umar Zameer and his family, there is a sense of relief, sense of renewed hope, some sadness too, but also the trauma that I mentioned, because that night back in 2021, a black vehicle blocked the family car while in the underground parking garage of Toronto City Hall. Seated inside that vehicle, Umar Zameer, his wife, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and their 2-year-old son, Elian, is now 5 years old, and he still remembers that night.
Whenever he goes out with Ida, I'm scared that Ida will come back home again crying and tell me Alian again saw a black van and ask me, "Mama, make sure this van doesn't hit our car and take over Baba again." So I want to move on, but I want him to move on from this, and I'm really struggling how we will do it. And I just wish that Alian doesn't have
Any bad
negative impact.
What do you tell him?
Umar had to go to court from morning till sometimes late in the evening, and the kids would be like, "Where's Baba? Where's everyone?" And we would be like, "Baba has a project. He's working on a project, and we'll pray for that project to be successful." And on Sunday, when we went home, and he hugged Alian and he said, "You know, Baba won the project." That was just so. It was worth the wait for that moment to come out.
So Faiza, he was released on bail, but he was under house arrest waiting for the trial, and he couldn't leave the house without an ankle bracelet.
And he couldn't go out with his son on his own. And he says he missed so much father and son time as well. And the first thing his son did when he got home on Sunday was he said, "Can we go out together now?" And so that was such an emotional explainer for him. And I asked him, I said, "Have you gone out since this verdict came in? Have you met anyone who recognized you?" He said there was a man who walked up to them, and that man walked up and he said, "I'm so sorry for what you've been through." And he said that meant the world to him. It meant that people were listening. It meant that his story was finally getting out there. And you know, he just moved to Canada in 2019 with his family.
Just before.
And that one conversation and the kindness of so many people, the support of so many people, he tells me, after this verdict came out, was so immense that they just have renewed love for Canada, for Canadians, and especially for his lawyer, because he says in the last 3 years, they've lost family, they've lost friends.
It is a tragedy for two families, his family as well as the family of the officer, and he keeps mentioning, he keeps bringing them up, and those children that do not have a father. It is truly a double tragedy.
He thinks about them daily. In almost every question I asked him, he mentions the Northrop family and how he thinks of them every single time. Every time he sees his son smiling, he thinks of Northrop's children. And even Ida Sheikh, the wife of Umar Zameer, says she's always thinking of Northrop, Jeffrey Northrop's wife.
There is much healing that needs to be done.